Matt Ryan and the Minnesota Vikings travel to the Bayou to take on Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. Can Kyle Donald's team with Ryan and David Johnson lead the Vikings to the championship? Or will Brian's team make it back once again for a chance at repeating behind Brees and Antonio Brown? Find out in the Clash of Titans. This Vikings-Saints matchup may be probably the funnest of the weekend. Especially if you go off the ESPN point projections where you have the Vikings projected to get 174, Saints projected to get 161. It projects a really high scoring affair. And talk about some weapons on both teams. It starts with the quarterback. Vikings, there is a quarterback battle on display going on right now in practice this week. We have heard from GM Kyle Donner about, it's back and forth right now. Although, Ryan has the edge. But looks, he's fighting for that spot. But we think Ryan ends up edging it out for this week because that matchup against San Francisco, simply put, they're terrible. I mean, they are terrible. The Jets would have torched them if they weren't starting a CFL quarterback in Bryce Petty. But now that they're facing Matt Ryan and Julio Jones maybe back, even to Taylor Gabriel, Mohamed Sanu, oh, Lordy, they're going to be a lot of points for Matt Ryan. This could be number one overall quarterback week. 30-plus points potentially. I mean, this could be a big advantage, especially with, on the Saints side, Drew Brees. 2 absolute dud weeks back-to-back. 19 combined total points in the past 2 weeks. 19 combined points. 6 interceptions. Arizona's a solid defense, and we saw last week against Tampa Bay, Brees had issues. Brees is going to be on the road now. He's not typically great on the road, so this is a thing where you got to give the edge to the Minnesota Vikings just because of the upside. Brees, until he shows he can get out of this rut, and it's going to be a question mark. At running back, ooh, boy, David Johnson against the New Orleans Saints. Now, you love David Johnson, number one running back in fantasy this season, but it's important to note, Saints defense has really started turning things around lately, especially that run defense. Sheldon Rankins has beefed up with his return, and it's definitely run. So things could be a little bit more tough sledding for David Johnson. But what's key for David Johnson is going to be the receiving game. Maybe he only gets 60, 70 yards rushing. But if he can get another 50, 60, 70 in the receiving game and a touchdown, we're looking at another 20-plus point day. So that's why you look at David Johnson as overall RB1 in fantasy, potentially week to week. Just because like Le'Veon Bell, what he can do with both the running and passing game. He also got Devontae Freeman against San Francisco 49ers, who 49ers defense, this is going to be bagging on, but they just terrible, man. They terrible. Just terrible. And Devontae Freeman, complete snoozer last week. I mean, did he even get one fantasy point? He may not have. 1.5, yeah, so it was just a really bad week. But now, comes back this week, he should get a lot of work against the 49ers. Chance to put up 20-plus points. You do have that running back by committee, but Freeman is an outstanding RB2. And with David Johnson, you have that 1-2 RB punch, and Freeman could deliver with Johnson 40-plus combined points. Flipping over New Orleans Saints, LeGarrette Blount, the beast. Denver Broncos, stout pass defense, but that run defense can be shaky, man. And with, New England potentially needing to run more in this game, Tom Brady leaning less on the pass, Garrett Blount could eat in this one. He passed 1,000 yards in the season last week. He's pretty much a lock for a touchdown almost. Get you 70, 80 yards. May not put Dave Johnson numbers, but hey, he's still Garrett Blount. He can still put up some big numbers. At the RB2 spot, LaShawn McCoy taking on Cleveland. This is where Saints may have the advantage because Cleveland, another awful, awful defense. And, there might be some Mike Gillislee taking up a touchdown or something, but, Gillis only got a handful of carries, 2 or 3 last week. McCoy handled most of the work. So that could be a big thing here. And, you're talking about another guy who would go 20, 25-plus points. So, RB1, you give the edge to Minnesota. RB2, though, you're giving the edge to New Orleans. Moved on to the wide receiver position. Oh, man, this wide receiver 1 matchup. Odell Beckham Jr. versus Antonio Brown. OBJ, he was quiet most of Sunday night, but then he just went off. And with that 60-plus, ooh, buddy, that was fun to watch. And that's the thing with OBJ. It just takes one play and he could rip it off, same like Antonio Brown. But OBJ taking on Detroit, who has been, everyone running into some issues lately, although you have seen improvement. OBJ should see 10-plus targets, and he could put up wide receiver 1 overall numbers, as could Antonio Brown against Cincinnati Bengals, who, try as they might, division battle, try and do whatever they can, take Antonio Brown away. It's probably not going to work. The one thing is, this is on the road. Ben Roethlisberger does a little bit less on the road, maybe some cold weather. Could be a big Le'Veon Bell game. And that's the one thing to watch here is Antonio Brown, huge, huge upside. He could give you 30, 40-point games. He also could end up with 10, 15 points. So it's a little bit of risk, but a big-time reward potentially. It's kind of a push right now at that wide receiver 1 spot. So you move on down to wide receiver 2. And this is an edge from the Minnesota Vikings. Mike Beast Evans, who is just a target hog, getting all the targets in Tampa Bay. Jameis Winston a little wild, but he keeps taking those risks. He finds Mike Evans, that's his guy. And it's resulted in Evans being the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy this year. Based on the Dallas Cowboys, who, solid secondary, but not great. Back and forth game. May not be high scoring, but Evans should still get a lot of work. Could finish. Could have a 100-yard game with a touchdown. Could have 50, 60 yards with no touchdown. But pure upside-wise, Evans could be a wide receiver top 5. Or it could be outside the top 15. But just because of his big playability and how much Winston relies on him, you got to give the edge, especially when. On the other side, I got Larry Fitzgerald. Really solid wide receiver. Consistent. He can get you 4, 5, 6 receptions each week, 50, 60 yards. But you're just not seeing those big days anymore. He's older. Arizona's starting to spread the ball around more, getting David Johnson involved. John Brown's playing a little bit of snaps. J.J. Nelson. Larry Fitzgerald, maybe more of a wide receiver 3, but his security, so you know what you're getting with 6, 7, 8, 9 points potentially. Against New Orleans, though, maybe this turns into a high-scoring game, so they could crack 12 points. We'll have to see, but you got to give the edge to Minnesota with Mike Evans. And then sliding down to the wide receiver 3 spot, and again, this just speaks to the talent on these teams. Sammy Watkins against Cleveland. Watkins missed much of the year with a foot injury. He's back now. He's getting more involved in that offense. 3 receptions, 4 receptions, but he had a touchdown last week. 50 yards. He's starting to get more and more snaps, starting to get back in that offense. And he can be a top 10 wide receiver for many weeks if he's healthy. Weather should be pretty fun in this game. There may be some wind, some snow, but Tyrod Taylor, he's going to go to his guy, Sammy Watkins. Especially against Cleveland, who just, we keep talking about awful defense this video, but that's an awful defense, and just make this an even greater week for Minnesota with the matchups they got. But on the other side, you got Jordy Nelson, who, Chicago, dreadful, man, just terrible, dreadful defense. Jordy Nelson, he's going to get you 6, 7 receptions. He's going to get you touchdowns. You're talking about a guy with possibly a 15-point floor, which is huge to have that kind of consistency in fantasy. Even if Aaron Rodgers has a bad calf, which he may, he's going to go to his guy Jordy Nelson, especially in the red zone, and you got to give that advantage at wide receiver 3 to New Orleans because that 15-point floor for Jordy, man, that's big. And Watkins, he does have that upside, but there's that potential floor of having 8, 9 points. So wide receiver 3 edge goes to New Orleans. Flipping over the tight end spot, Tyler Eifert versus Delaney Walker. Walker's now healthy, Eifert's now healthy. 2 guys who missed parts of the season with injuries, but now they're back. With A.J. Green, this is going to be the key. If he returns, he could have less of a role, he being Eifert. If Green doesn't play, then Eifert's going to be another heavily targeted guy against Pittsburgh. Should be a very high-scoring game, so Eifert's going to be involved heavily. The big thing here is going to be the touchdown. It has always been about touchdowns for Eifert. Doesn't often go above 60 yards. Just got to rely on those touchdowns and hope he makes a trip to the end zone, turn a 4 or 5 point day into a 10, 11, 12 point day. On the other side, Delaney Walker, he was a big-time target for Marcus Mariota early in the year, missed some time. And you saw Rashard Matthews taking over. So, you see it in the numbers now. Past few weeks, 4 receptions, 3 receptions, 2 receptions. Those numbers starting to go down for Delaney. Still a fairly decent matchup, especially with Derek Johnson for Kansas City linebacker being out. You kind of like Walker. But in the end, you're going to give the edge to Eifert because of that touchdown upside. Well, Walker is a little bit more security blanket. Will get you some yards, but you're not as sure on the touchdowns, especially in what could be a fairly low-scoring game. And down on the flex spot, this is something that always you can see change during the week. But Carlos Hyde for Minnesota, Atlanta defense. You go back and watch the film. Todd Gurley could have gone for 100 yards against them, but the problem was Jeff Fisher just not running the ball much. And with not facing Atlanta for 49ers, Chip Kelly, as bad as that team is, he's going to stick to running the football. So Hyde should get 15, 20 touches, and he could turn some big plays there. So you got to like that, especially for RB3/flex spot. 15 potential points, maybe you get to 20, although 15 is what he's averaging this season, so it's probably the safer area. On the other side, you got Latavius Murray. Man, Murray. Just after being traded just at the deadline, sneaking it in there. He's been ripping off some big days past 2 weeks. He's at almost 200 total yards, 200 total rushing yards in the past 2 weeks. 3 rushing touchdowns, has over 50 fantasy points in those past 2 weeks. San Diego Chargers, man, they've been pretty exploitable. Murray should get another 20-plus touches, 20 touches in this game, and he could turn another 20-plus performance. Because of that, you're going to give slight edge to New Orleans. Could go back and forth on, but really right now, edge to New Orleans. Defensive spot, Bills defense. They've been known to make plays. They've been known to get some sacks. They have hit a wall lately. Jacksonville, where you think they would be able to take them down, they only got you 2 fantasy points. Then they hit some tough spots facing Oakland Raiders and Pittsburgh Steelers. -4 against Oakland, 4 total against Pittsburgh. It's just, part of it's weather dependent, which is going to be in their favor. That's why they got 3 interceptions via Ben Roethlisberger. But in this one, RG3 is going to give you turnovers. Cleveland Browns are bad. Bills defense could turn one of the top defense performances of the day. And on the New Orleans side of the ball, Bengals defense against Pittsburgh. We'll have to see. Maybe a change comes and New Orleans finds another defense to run with via the waiver wire. Or maybe they're not and they're just going to try out and risk the Bengals defense. We'll have to see. They may end up changing it. I think they will. And yeah, so right now though, with how the lines are set up, edge goes to the Bills defense. Things could change when the waiver wire is processed on Wednesday and then Friday. But right now the edge goes to Minnesota. And just so you know, we take a lot of these positions seriously, and it could come down to kickers doing some stuff, but really we don't. Matt Bryant, Cairo Santos, 2 top 5 kickers in fantasy of late. So, it's just kind of a push. We'll see how it works out. Head coach position, don't get us started. It's terrible, man. Just ignore the head coach position. Pretend it doesn't exist. If that's deciding this matchup, that's going to be disappointing. But as of right now, if we have to pick one winner, we are going with the Minnesota Vikings. Just the high-powered abilities with Matt Ryan, David Johnson, Devontae Freeman, OBJ, Mike Evans, Sammy Watkins, Carlos Hyde. And they just have too good of matchups. Some things have not gone New Orleans' way with the matchups. There are still some great ones, but it's bad timing for them. With all the great matchups Minnesota has, we give them the edge in this one. We think we will be seeing the Minnesota Vikings take on the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. But the bottom line is this matchup should be a very high-scoring one that could come down to the wire, and one we are certainly looking forward to watching this weekend. And just remember, we have some fun, exciting games coming up. Look at this game. You want to know, when will this game be decided? Vikings lineup, they got all their guys going Sunday. Latest going Sunday night. Saints lineup, all their guys going Sunday. None in the afternoon, or none of the evening. So we'll find out at the end of Sunday which of these teams is going to the championship. Ladies and gentlemen, it is going to be a fun one.